Hello and welcome to the Tank Club. I know it's early days on the ESO Gold Road PTS, but since I've spent quite a bit of time testing Scribing already on a preview server in some early testing, I wanted to share my personal favourite tank spells that I've scribed so far. With 4,000 possible combinations, there's going to be a ton of different ways to scribe and set things up perfectly for how you want to play. But I've been focusing on looking at how we can improve tanking, especially on some of the weaker classes, and this is what I've put together so far. Let me know in the comments below what your favourite scribing creations are that you've discovered. So the first thing we're going to look at is Elemental Explosion. Now the combination of things that I've managed to put together here create this into a mega sort of AoE debuff immobilize, and this is going to be especially useful on those classes that don't have an immobilize. So the Templar didn't have one until now, it does now have one. Things like the Nightblade, the Sorcerer, the Necromancer, they don't have really good big AoE immobilize skills. So this is going to really open up that opportunity for them to have something now. And so in this one I've attached shock damage. Now the reason for this is because this is going to apply AoE, concussion and minor vulnerability, and it appears to also be uncapped, so it will hit all enemies that are in this area. I've then also gone for Immobilizing Strike for this 3-second immobilize on all enemies, and again this is uncapped, it will just immobilize as many enemies as are in the circle. And then the reason why I went with the shock damage and not frost damage is because you can apply 20 seconds of minor brittle without needing to use it with the frost effect. So going with the shock damage adds another debuff, and then you get the minor brittle in there as well. The only downside to this skill is the 2-second delay, so it is kind of a little bit challenging in comparison to something like Choking Talons, which just acts immediately, but you do get a lot of benefits and effects for that 2-second delay. While it would be effective on a boss for that 20 seconds of minor brittle, it does make it challenging because you don't really want to risk 2-second delay of casting this when on a boss fight. The next skill I've been looking at is Shield Throw, and this is kind of multifunctional. It's not really good for the pull and taunt due to it being a stam cost, but it does have multi-targeting on adds for some AoE DPS. Mostly seems decent for tanks with no good burst heals such as the Nightblade, the Templar, or a Sorcerer with no pets. And the reason why I say that is because if we put together magic damage, so this turns it into a magicka costing skill. If we use any of the other options here, it makes it a stamina skill, but they're also not really super strong. When we then go on to Sage's Remedy, this creates a health scaling heal. So the more max health that you've got, the bigger this heal will be. Just on this character that I'm using now, it is critting for over 10k. So it is on the kind of lower side. If you look at it, 5460 is what it says there. But then when we look at the next part, this is mega strong as well. So we get major vitality for 10 seconds. So it buffs our healing received and shield strength by 12%. So if you have got a damage shield and you are using this heal, you are going to get like the additional benefit. The fact if you kind of have cast this twice on the second hit, it's going to do a bigger heal because of that major vitality. So in fights where you need some extra healing, in a fight where you need guaranteed major vitality because you need more healing received, something like Barsai hard mode comes to mind, this would actually be really good because you could just guarantee to get that vitality very, very easily. The next one I've been looking at is Soul Burst, and this, it's kind of strange because it's almost a Void Bash Vatashran one-hand and shield replacement, and it can be kind of customized into an Igneous Shield alternative as well. The way we achieve this is with the 2-second pull, so after 2 seconds it will pull enemies within 8 meters to you, and you can see a little circle on the floor where the enemies are going to be pulled from. 8 meters is a very, very small radius, however. It's going to be very niche in terms of doing this vacuum pull, but it does like vacuum enemies straight on top. It's the best stack that you're ever going to create. The other option I really liked was the damage shield, so you can apply a damage shield and this will apply to you, but also group members as well. What this does as well is it will make the affix and signature scripts apply to you or an ally also, so you can also give a bit of a group buff by taking this option. Particularly on the DK, the class mastery is a nice one to go for because for a DK it reduces incoming damage by 2% plus 1% for each enemy within 6 meters, so up to potentially 8% damage reduction. And imagine if you are using the damage shield option, you could be passing this on to a group member as well. With that damage shield you could go for a kind of a heal there with Sage's Remedy. You could go for some ulti gem, but it is going to cost you a soul gem each time, so if you've got a lot of soul gems, you could use this for a spammable ulti gen. And then for the last one I went with the maim because we seem to have lost minor maim with the things that we're using here. So if it does pull everything in, if we're going with that pull option, it pulls everything in, reduces our damage for all the enemies that are around us, and then it debuffs them. So it's like a nice triple layered thing that all relates to AoE enemies. Next we've got Wield Soul. So this is a single target magicka chain for classes which don't have one. So Sorcerer, Templar, Nightblade, Arcanist, Warden, they all kind of rely quite heavily on Silver Leash, depending on the situation. So we're able to use this as a magicka based chain skill. The options obviously here, the pull, so it's going to do magic damage, it's going to pull enemies, and it's going to taunt them for 15 seconds. The next bit is a really strong option because it kind of makes it very similar to the DK using Unrelenting Grip. So Druid's Resurgence restores 1000 magicka and 1000 stamina. We're able to recover a good amount of resources, both magicka and stamina. It's also potential to use this magicka skill to recover stamina. So we're going back to that age-old situation with the Dragon Knight where they could spam Igneous Shield to get stamina back. In a similar fashion now, you can do that on virtually every single class by using Druid's Resurgence to get 1000 stamina, but also recover a bit of the magicka cost of using this skill in the first place. I then personally liked to throw Cowardice on this because it's going to apply Major Cowardice for 10 seconds. So this will stack with Major and Minor Maim to debuff an enemy, and by having Cowardice, the thing in my mind I was thinking was it now allows us to kind of make use of this skill on a boss fight. So if you are fighting a boss and the chain is kind of just sat there being useless because it's a useless skill, maybe you're on a boss fight, there's going to be ads coming in at some point, but this is just kind of a wasted skill because it's on your bar for no reason. But by putting a Cowardice on there, you can still hit the boss with the chain to recover resources and to apply a debuff to a boss. So it's giving you a reason to use it for ad pulls, it's giving you a reason to use it for when there's ads on a boss fight, but it's also giving you a reason to use it on an actual boss itself by having that extra debuff there that you don't typically see very often. You could also use Vitality for that Major Vitality again, like if you, let's say you're not using it on Shield Throw or you're doing something different, maybe you're not even using Shield Throw, then you could put Major Vitality here as well instead of the debuff to give you a buff. So again, really nice variety in terms of what it's able to offer. If you wanted to use this on a class that doesn't need a chain, you could use the damage shield combined with that Druid's Resurgence and Vitality for a crazy huge group damage shield. The next one we've got is Torchbearer. This is a nice group buff skill, but it does cost stamina. Now everything in this is going to be group based because you will see when we look at it, when we take Generate Ultimate, it says the signature and epic scripts apply to you and your allies. So this makes this extremely strong. The downside again to this is it does have a channel time, which means you won't be blocking when you cast it. That's the only downside. So potentially a really good off-tank skill. So that Generate Ultimate is a group buff. You're going to generate one ultimate to you and your allies with each sweep. So when you do the sweep, it does it 3 times. That's 3 ultimate. Here you could use Class Mastery. So you could actually buff up your group's damage. So gain 50 weapon and spell damage, reduce your damage taken per enemy. You've got Gladiator's Tenacity as well, which reduces damage taken by 30% for 2.2 seconds. So you could do the swipe if you've got a mechanic coming up, reduce the group's damage by 30% because it's going to affect group members as well. And then that kind of looks strong, but it's enemies with disabling effects, and that wouldn't typically be a boss. When we go down to this bit as well, you've then got Heroism, which grants minor heroism to you and your group. That does now mean if you did use that, your group wouldn't need to use ulti-gem potions because you're able to provide it with a simple swipe of your torch. Next we got this one, I don't even know how to pronounce that, but the Contingency skill. It's a strange spell as you activate it and then it doesn't do anything until you use another spell, but it's also procs off things like dodge roll. I don't really like it compared to other skills, but the one that I did decide to put together was basically a damage shield skill. So it's going to do an 11k group damage shield, and by using this particularly, it turns it into a group skill. You then got Gladiator's Tenacity, reducing incoming damage by 8% for 7.2 seconds. And then going on that theme of damage reduction for this skill in particular, I went with Minor Protection as well, since we're already protecting the group by adding that Minor Protection in there. Or you could use Minor Resolve if that's missing from like your group. Then finally, we've got Trample, and this can be turned into basically almost like having a refreshing path, but without needing a Nightblade. It is also a powerful assault proc, and it can be turned into a sort of Magicka Caltrops, but it doesn't do Major Breach, which is the real downside to it. So with this, if you take the magic damage, it will turn it into a magic ability as well as doing some AoE magic damage. Every other option will turn this into a stamina skill. Thief's Swiftness gives a group-based 15% movement speed buff, which can be a nice little option. And then we've got a few things in there, such as Mangle. So applies minor Mangle to enemies for 10 seconds, reducing their max health by 10%. The only other skill that does this is Pulsar. If you are trying to compact things into a smaller amount of skills, if you were using the Elemental Explosion we talked about earlier for that shock damage, the immobilizing and the brittle, then you wouldn't really need to use pulsar for that. You'd only be using pulsar really to gain mangle, so you could turn this into mangle instead, and that would be really good. You've also got the option of applying off balance for 7 seconds if you wanted to try and do that, so another really good option there. By having one of these effects, what it means is you've got a speed boost for when you're out of combat and moving and progressing through a dungeon or a trial, but then when you are in combat, you've got something that affects you in combat with the mangle or the off balance. So that's really good because it means that you're not wasting bar space on a skill just for a speed boost. You're able to apply something that's beneficial for when you need a speed boost, and then it can stay on your bar because when you get to that boss fight, when you get to that ad pull, you're going to apply mangle. If you're on a boss fight, you could be applying off balance. So there's some beneficial reason to keep slotting it depending on any situation. So it is only week 1. I wanted to give you a quick insight on kind of the things that I've been putting together. I'd love to hear what you guys are doing as well. This system is very exciting, and I do love how it's covering a lot of gaps that are missing. It gives us the option of combining some things together to give us a bit more bar space. So I'm a huge fan of this system, especially from the tank perspective, and I'm looking forward to seeing what changes are made throughout the PTS, and then what we can do in terms of adding this stuff to our builds on the live server as we get to Gold Road. We're going to have a complete overhaul of the Tank Club website for Gold Road. Obviously, I've not been doing a lot of updates for the ESO portion of the website just because of the anticipation of scribing. I know scribing is going to have a huge impact on tanking, so I don't want to waste too much time updating everything and then having to change everything again with Gold Road, since we are going to see some significant changes to tank builds. We are going to have a lot of updates done for Gold Road. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.